All right. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So are we ready?
Yes, we're good.
This is the NoSoKoPo with Jay and Tim. I am Jason Burney, and he is Timothy Home. You'll actually hear Tim in a minute or two in this episode of the Not So Korean podcast. As you probably know, and as we always say, we usually record this live in UK's Koreatown itself. That's an area in and around New Malden. That's the largest Koreatown and Korean community in Europe. Well, this episode's no different. Myself and Tim in New Malden, Koreatown, and Eugene Kim, not too far away in the Kingston borough. Eugene Kim is a translator and language tutor, and someone Tim has collaborated with before, and someone we've both got to know over the last couple of years or so. So here we go, the interview with myself and Tim and Eugene Kim.
Okay. So hello, Eugene. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
How are you guys?
Yeah, we're all right. You, Jason?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm all right. Busy with doing the podcast and other stuff, you know.
Yes, it's a season. Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe first of all, can you just introduce yourself and what you do these days?
Yes. So my name is Eugene Kim. Kim is my surname. As you know, Kim is the most common surname in Korea. But I have to tell people in the UK every time that Kim is a surname, because obviously Kim is also a name in the UK. So that's my name. I'm a translator and I'm a Korean teacher. And also I'm a PhD candidate in English literature at Kingston University. I'm also a mother. I've been living in the UK for about 10 years now.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your life in the UK and why you came here originally?
Yeah, I think my life in the UK as a Korean is not so much different from other Koreans, actually. I came here for a reason. Me and my husband, we wanted an adventure after 2 years of marriage. We had some options, of course, and the States, US was the first option because, as you know, Korea and the States, we had very close connection, and I have my relatives in the States, so we were considering United States. But then, I don't know, some strange power led us to the UK, and then we thought about, why not, adventure to the UK. And actually, my husband, he had studied English for about a month when he was 20 in a small town called Worthing, next to Brighton, nearby Brighton. Yes. So based on that experience, which he really enjoyed, he suggested UK. So he came here. We studied, and then somehow we're still living here, and then we settled. And I have my baby now.
Right.
He's working, I'm studying, I'm working too. So yes, that was our journey. Yes.
Right. Well, I know that you also lived in Canada before, right? How long were you there?
Yeah, I studied English when I was 21. I stayed there for about a year, and I lived in Toronto. So we talked about this when we first met. Yeah. Because Tim, you are from Canada too.
Yes. Right.
And it was a very positive experience, but also at the same time, it was a bit challenge because it was my first time to go abroad. I had no clue about life in Canada, and I had a huge fantasy about living abroad because of all these movies that I've been watching. But in Canada, 21-year-old girl, I didn't have a driving license. And of course, I didn't have a car, which means I had nowhere to go. Canada is a big country, and also Toronto, it's a large city.
Right.
I really had nowhere to go. So I think I spent most of the time in the house that I was staying. And the nearest place I could go was a petrol station. So I went there and I would buy sneakers and I just had a walk around the town. Sometimes we went to this lake. I forgot the name, but it was very serene and beautiful.
Mhm.
So I went there and I like I said, most of the time I spent the time in a house and I
Yeah.
watched lots of shows and I studied English through that, I think,
Right.
actually. And also it was 2004.
Yeah.
So the singers like Avril Lavigne, Maroon 5, Hoobastank, they're huge.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time I got introduced to this pop culture.
Mhm.
So I think not just the books, I also studied the culture context.
Mhm.
I thank Canada for that. And because of that experience, although I struggled a bit, I think I found it much, much easier to settle in the UK because it's my second or third time to be abroad. Yes.
Yeah, well, I was curious what differences you found between living in Canada and the UK. Were there any major like cultural differences?
So I imagine, for example, you would buy trainers here, but sneakers in America, because we have
yes, so yes, the vocabularies and also the Tim Hortons and the Costa here. So the two different coffee shops,
Right.
And the lifestyle, I think. The Canada, I think the life's more peaceful and serene because there are so many like the forest and sceneries around, and there is a big mall. You don't have a mall in the UK, almost, but it's not like Canada.
You have small
dental center in Kingston.
Yes, dental center is a mall. Yes, but I find like things in the UK are more like a miniature compared to Canada.
Right.
Very small, especially London. Yes, but still, when I visit the cities up north, like Birmingham, Manchester, even like Glasgow in Scotland, I feel like I'm back in Canada. But these tall buildings like skyscrapers and the broad road and cars. So that's the kind of similar vibe. But I think the lifestyle a bit different. In the UK, I feel more, I don't know, there's a bit of like craziness in the life of the UK. Because I think it's more of a mixture, especially London. There are many like subcultures that I can explore. And since my topic, the PhD topic is about Gothic and Gothic literature, I find abundant resources in the UK. And of course, Canada, I admire the Canadian writers as well, like Ennis Monroe and Margaret Atwood, but they're different.
Right.
Even their style of writing is different from the British writers. This is a different topic that we should continue another time.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
But actually, you said when you went to Canada, because America, because you'd seen movies, you had a certain thing you were expecting. So when you came to the UK, you weren't. When you came to the UK, you weren't expecting like Notting Hill, Hugh Grant.
Or Pride and Prejudice or something.
Yeah,
I know.
I've heard even in Korea, some people that we live in 100 years.
Yes, yeah. But strange enough, I hadn't had much fantasy about UK. I don't know. Maybe because I studied English literature in Korea, but the Korean university, they're strongly focused on American literature somehow. So I mainly read American authors' books. I mainly watched American movies. So I knew about British films and British literature, but I hadn't had much fantasy about it. So I think that actually helped me settle in the UK and kind of absorb the culture as it is, because I hadn't had much expectation about UK. But then when I discovered the layers of the British culture, I kind of realized, oh, wait, I read this in a book when I was young. I watched this in a movie or a show when I was young, but then I hadn't realized it was a British show, British book. But later, when I realized,
I found that like some other Korean friends I talked to, like recently we visited the tomb of Jane Austen in Winchester, And I
Yeah.
mentioned this to a Korean friend, and they didn't realize that Jane Austen was British. And I was like,
Really?
but she's one of the most British authors out there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But that's possible. Yeah, that can happen to any Korean because yes, because of this old cultural influence from America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned you're studying about Gothic literature. How did you get into Gothic literature?
That's related to my answer about the previous question. So I hadn't realized that I was interested in Gothic until I met my supervisor. So I submitted my proposal and I just wrote down about I'm interested in this and that. And I just feel that these whole things are related to some point. And then he said, oh, you are interested in Gothic and you're interested in Gothic sensibility. And I was like, Gothic sensibility? What does that even mean? So I've been figuring out what that means. And that's actually a topic of my thesis. I'm trying to define what is Gothic. What is Gothic sensibility? So generally, Gothic can refer to a kind of a genre of literature, a genre of film, or even fashion. But they are like very contemporary legacies of Gothic. If you trace back, Gothic has this certain relationship with art and aesthetics. So I start my discussion from there. To me, it's a sort of negative aesthetics. So it doesn't have to do with what is wrong and right. It doesn't have to do with morality. If it pleases you, even though it's wrong, it's still okay because it's art. My thesis is something about that. It's very hard to describe, especially for me as an international student, you know. But I'm trying to describe in my own way. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, obviously you started this journal of Korean literature called Nabillera, which is online only, I believe.
Yes.
And so could you tell us how that started and why you wanted to do it?
Yeah. I mean, I first started as a reviewer. I wanted to have some experience when I first started my career as a translator. Because even though I'm Korean, I cannot say that I'm an expert in Korean literature. I wanted to know the trend, and I wanted to know what the foreign readers are interested in finding out about Korean literature. And then I came up with this literature magazine, and then I became a reviewer, and it was a great experience. After like 2 years, my predecessor, the editor-in-chief at the time, had to suspend the magazine because of the study. And then I took over the magazine and I've been running. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing experience because it's non-profit magazine, which means we don't pursue profit. And then I still have lots of participants from everywhere. They're willing to invest their knowledge and capability. So we've got the volunteer translators, we've got the volunteer reviewers, we've got the volunteer copy editors. So it's been running great. And I think it was just when I started my post as editor-in-chief that the Korean literature became suddenly so popular and the industry got bigger. I got so much more response than I thought. And I also noticed that the format of our magazine, Nabillera, maybe has to alter the direction, or, you know, we have to think about our future because of the change in the industry. Now, more and more Korean writers and their works are being translated. And since the major publishers in Anglophone speaking country, they're paying attention to Korean writers, we've been having a little issue with the copyright. I think it's like a normal side effect of a progress. When something's making progress, you have these noises. So I've been facing some copyright issues. while preparing for the next issue of Nabillera. But I see positively. I don't think it's a hurdle. We
Right.
can overcome the hurdle and we can figure out. Because somehow the Nabillera is going to the same direction with the progress of Korean literature in a world market, I should say. So yes, we are. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples of what kind of articles or texts you?
The copyright or
No, just
examples?
the stories of what kinds of things you focus on.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Copyright might be interesting.
Nabillera,
Yeah.
yes. So Nabillera is focusing on contemporary literature. We are not looking at mainstream writers because mainstream writers have been published or being discussed.
Right.
We are trying to introduce new writers who write about topics that are not so discussed in Korea. So
For example, yeah.
Sorry?
For example, what kind of?
For example, yes. For example, we are translating a writer Kim Mella in the future issue, and Kim Mella, she's a new writer. She writes about queerness, and she writes about the life of a queer people and their love, and it's just she observes the life of the queer, and she has this brilliant insights about the queerness and the living as a queer in Korea, because queer is such a topic in contemporary Korea as well. Many people are talking about it, and we now have some writers talking about minorities and queerness and maybe homosexuality. But Kim Mella's work is more lighthearted, not that serious, and sometimes very provocative, and it's new. So we wanted to introduce Kim Mella to the future issue. Yeah.
So what was one of the examples of the copyright? Can you do that, or is it not something?
Yes. So copyright issue is regarding the writers who are quite popular at the moment. I think even like few years ago, we hadn't have a problem with the copyright. When we contacted the Korean publisher, it was always okay because we do the non-exclusive copyright. So which means that we don't mind if any other translator publish their work based on the same original manuscript, we wouldn't mind. But even that non-exclusive copyright can be an issue nowadays. It seems like that. So for example, we wanted to translate Kim Cho-yeop's essay about living with a disability in South Korea. It's called 사이보그가 되다. And I contacted the publisher, but I think Kim Cho-yeop's work is already out there in a market. So they said it's not possible to allow a permit to give the permission. So that's one of the examples. And also I feel that the communication with the publishers and the whole progress has been very slow, and they require more details about the contract and everything.
Okay. And just leading on from Nabillera, can you just? I'm sorry if you've already covered this.
Yeah.
But why did you decide on that name? Was there a couple of choices, or
what does the name mean actually?
Nabillera, I actually know that there is a Korean drama called Nabillera. It's the same title.
Oh, really?
Nabillera is a phrase from a poem by poet Jung Ji-young. Yeah, and the poem is called 승무. That's the title. So it's a very famous phrase, and I think most Koreans know the phrase Nabillera. Nabillera means kind of you blow something away, but it's very beautiful term. It's very artistic term of blow away or fly away, and I think my predecessor liked the term because it kind of feels sublime, So we chose that name, Nabillera, and I think it's still very beautiful.
And one other thing, you mentioned you've got so many participants now. Does that mean that you've had a chance to take a back seat more, to step back, or are you just as involved as you were before?
I am still involved. I think every participator's role counts. And when I first became the editor-in-chief, I thought my role would be just contacting the publishers and just, contacting the participants and pushing them forward. But no, I think I still need a lot of work to cover. I participate in a reviewing, and I participating in every process, because when you read the draft, every time there is a flaw, there is something to comment, and then it never stops. Yeah. So I think my role is the same.
Okay.
And your most recent issue seemed to be about mental health. Is that right?
Yes.
Why do you think that's such an important issue these days?
Because first of all, it's like disability or queerness. Mental health is the topic that not many Korean people even think about or willing to discuss, but it's been on the surface since a few years ago. And I think from the pandemic, since the beginning of the pandemic, we're all lonely. We are all disconnected to each other. And I thought that literature is necessary then more than ever. And I wanted to introduce, various voices from the world. So the Korean young writers talking about loneliness and being disconnected and living alone in a lonely city, Seoul. I thought that the readers out there would be interested in reading their stories. And, when you translate a novel or a poem, you become their first reader. Yeah. And then I felt moved when I first read the works. And then I had no doubts about translating those novels and the poems. And we even translated a webtoon that time. And it had good responses. And I'm very glad that we could introduce the various forms of literature to the foreign readers.
Right. And so what do you think about this sort of explosion of Korean literature in the past few years? Do you think is that related to, the rest of the Hallyu wave of, like Korean dramas and movies and things, or do you see it as a separate thing altogether?
Yeah, definitely. I think they're related, because I've been feeling the need strongly in a classroom. When I first started the Korean course in 2019, I had the K-pop fans more than the drama fans. Now I have drama fans only. I think the K-pop fans, they organize their own group and then they study within a group, I think. But the drama fans, they're more individualistic, and somehow the fans of Korean films and the movies, they're already expert of movies and stuff. They've been reading a lot, they've been watching a lot, and somehow their final destination is Korean literature and drama. So they already know, they can expect and they can kind of anticipate the plot, but many times the Korean literature and Korean drama, the plot kind of anticipates their anticipation. And then they kind of feel that, I need to study more. I need to find out more. So each term I have a few students who want to study more and who want to navigate towards literature. So I see this trajectory. I see this kind of pathway of the drama fans. They're slowly moving towards literature, because it kind of makes sense, you become interested in a certain medium and a content, you want to develop the taste and you want to explore more.
And then you have the Korean films. Some of them are based on books, and maybe the drama. I don't know. I wonder if they go there because they've seen that and they want to know more about the writing.
Yes, of course. So they want to compare the book and the movie. And we all want to do it. We all want to do that. When we enjoy watching a movie, we want to read a book as well. So that's the same for the Korean books and the Korean films as well. And also they want to study about Korean history. That's what the student told me, because some Korean dramas are based on a historical context, and then they want to make sure if this really happened or not, and they think to find it out, they need to consult the literature.
Yeah. I did wonder if it was they wanted to know more about the fiction side, but it sounds like there's a mixture of fiction and history.
Exactly.
That's very interesting.
So yes, so as you know, the KCCUK, they have this Korean literature night every month. So I've got some books, the copies after the book talk and the event. So I brought the books to the classroom, and then the student, they borrowed my books. So I think it was their kind of, I don't know, entrance. Entrance to the Korean literature.
Yeah, thanks to the KCC, it was for me too, because I wouldn't have gone into the literature club.
Yes.
But that's interesting. What's the next?
Well, maybe you could briefly mention the novel that we're working on, or that we were working. Well, we're still.
Oh yes, that novel. Yes.
So this is 손가락이 간질간질, and or in English, My Itchy Middle Finger, by Kang Byoung Yoong. Could you mention how you discovered that novel, and also maybe a little bit about our translation process?
So the author Kang Byoung Yoong 선생님 and I, we knew each other before he published the 손가락이 간질간질. We had a mutual friend, and the mutual friend is actually my mentor and my 선생님. So I had a chance to travel to Ljubljana in Slovenia many years ago, and then there I met Kang Byoung Yoong 선생님, and then I liked him as a person. And a few years later, he published that novel. I was in Korea, so I bought the copy and read it, and I loved it. And I wanted to translate the book, because although the book was an easy read, I finished the book within a few hours. It was very easy, smooth read. But then I thought that it might not be so easy to translate the book. And then I got motivated, because as you know, the book, the topic is also about the queerness, if we interpret the book in that way.
Gender issues as well, right?
This is why
it is an issue. And I think the cover is also, there are hints.
And
the color colors. Yes. And also the pronoun, the pronoun. I should tell you about this Korean pronoun, the grammar thing first. So in Korean grammar, we don't have a gender pronoun. We don't refer to a person as he or she. We'd rather repeat the person's name, or we omit the subject. And
you do. I mean, you technically, you could say kunun or kunyon, and right.
We could say,
but you don't often use that, right?
That's not very Korean, actually. I don't think it's quintessentially Korean. That's a kind of translated term. I mean, there is kunyo, but it's not originally Korean. I don't think so. So especially when we read a Korean literature, when there is no gender pronoun, we always have that issue whether we translate that name into him or her. We entirely have to, rely on our instinct to figure out whether this person is a man or a woman. So if that writer intended to leave it blurry, leave it obscure, then what should we do as a translator?
Right.
So that was my question. And then I thought maybe I could use the reverse psychology. We could even be more radical. We could just put forward, we just go with it, so that we could use the pronoun they, to leave it obscure, and intend to leave it obscure. And I thought it could be timely with what's happening around the world right now. All the things happening in Twitter, him and his, him, and her, this all pronoun thing,
Right.
So I hope that this book will contribute to this trend and the movement toward the gender equality and, you know, the new trend in a young culture.
Yeah. So we
Oh
were
yeah, so we haven't talked about the plot. We haven't talked about the plot.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, could you just briefly
Yes.
summarize what the story is about? Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Yes. So the story is about a teenage baseball player who happened to have the third eye on his or her middle finger. And because this baseball player is still young, they don't know what to do. They think about visiting a hospital, but then they don't think it's a good idea. But so they just agonize, and then somehow their third eye gains popularity, and then they become a celebrity, and then their fame as a person with a third eye is even more like viral than they as a baseball player. And in the end, it's a happy ending, but there are like layers of the author's criticism about the current society, especially about the part where the main character, I, becomes famous because of the third eye, not because of their career. And also the implication of third eye, obviously, the third finger and the eye on the third finger, obviously. So if you just look for the implications between the lines, I think it will be a fun read. And also, because it's a happy ending, it's not something that you read with a, I don't know, lots of question. You don't have to read with a question. You just enjoy the reading. It's a pleasant read.
Right.
What else do we have? Can you add anything, Tim?
Well, I
haven't read it, so
yeah. Well, if Jason has any questions about
I have lots about the book, but I mean, I don't know where to start really. I mean, you've given a good explanation there.
Well, I did want to ask you, what for you, I mean, was the gender pronoun, was that the most difficult part to translate, or was there anything else that you found really challenging during the translation process from Korean to English?
Yes, I find it very difficult to be creative as a translator. Like to what extent I should be faithful to the original text, or I should be creative, because the reader should enjoy the translation. And like a literal translation, sometimes it doesn't make sense, and even though it makes sense, it's not fun sometimes. So you have this urge to create something more. Sometimes you have this urge to edit. Sometimes you have the urge to just take a whole bit out. But then you're not sure because you're a translator. So that's my biggest, I don't know, the struggle. That's my biggest struggle. Gender pronoun is actually okay. It's a matter of determination. So if I think that, okay, I can do this, the reader will understand, then it's fine. But this whole flow and being positively creative as a translation, that's the biggest hurdle for me. What about you, Tim?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, actually. I should have thought about it more before.
Yeah.
But,
you have said before that you do have struggle with certain things. You have to refer to other people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you touched on it a little bit, but trying to make it more natural in English, because there were many expressions in Korean which sound a little awkward when you translate them literally into English. And also this author in particular, I know a lot of Korean authors do this, but they tend to repeat things quite a bit. So, how much to keep in the translation, how much to take out without losing the author's voice. That was really tricky. Yeah.
I feel the same. And I think the struggle that I have and the struggle that you have, they're different.
Yeah.
Because we are speaking different languages.
Yes. Obviously, you're coming from native Korean perspective and I'm coming from a native English perspective. And then also we were translating alternate chapters, and And those
Yes.
alternate chapters also had different perspectives, right? One was in the first person and one was in the third person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So, but in a way that kind of helped us because they were written in a slightly different style. Our translations were also in a different style, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I think.
Oh yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. It's just a trivial thing that I think you might have found it difficult to repeat the same verb and the same subject every time in a sentence. And also, if my memory is correct, most of the parts in your chapters were indirect speech, wasn't it?
Right.
So it's a bit of a challenge to translate the indirect speech every sentence, because you have this urge to just make it like a conversation, lively dialogue, but then you feel like you have to be faithful, not to lose the author's voice, as you said.
Right.
I felt the same. Yes, I felt the same.
So how, if you don't mind me asking, so how did you bring those two different ways of translating different chapters slightly in line? Did someone have to change even more? So
editing, I suppose, and we had to read each other's work, and we edited each other's work, but and so there were some inconsistencies that we had to sort of, try to get closer together. But it took a lot of work, actually, a lot longer than I expected.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're still go ahead.
Yeah, I'm still working on it.
Yeah, we are still working on it.
Never ending.
I should say that we recently were awarded a grant, a translation grant or a publishing grant from the
publishing grant.
Translation Institute of Korea, or 한국문학 번역원. And so, a lot of the work that we did to apply for that you did that, actually. So I thanks to you for that. Yeah.
We did that, yeah.
So do you think it will be more of a challenge to get it published than it was to actually translate it?
I feel like we still have a long way to go. And I think if we find a publisher and an agent, a new agent, we will have to edit it again.
Right.
But it's actually okay. I welcome the constant editing, as far as it turned out to be, it turns out to be okay. It's meant to be that way. But so when we were working on the translation, I thought that would be the end, but no, it's another beginning.
But I think it's great anyway, even if it takes a long time. I think it's great just because of the subject matter, and because it's regarding genre and sexuality.
Gender, and it's for younger people as well. It's mostly aimed at teenagers, so hopefully young people can enjoy it.
I just think it would be great, because obviously once the English, there is an English version, then it says so much. It shows the English people what Korean writing can be, not just the sort of standard ones that you hear about in the KCC, for example.
I hope so. Young people nowadays, they're more awakened than we think. And they're very awoke. They're interested in everything, and they welcome everything. So I think it's very timely to publish that 손가락이 간질간질 book in the UK or in other countries, like any countries. So I hope that it turns out to be well.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that part 1, and part 2 will be in our next episode. So that's all from us. We'll see you then. 안녕히 계세요.